you all for joining us today at the first ever Aging and Equity Workshop. My name is Roberto Ramirez. My pronouns are he, him, or él if you speak Spanish. And I currently serve as a health promotion manager at the County of San Diego's Aging and Independent Services, or AIS for short. At AIS, I oversee the planning and implementation of various health and wellness programs and initiatives which aim to help older adults live healthy, safe, and thriving lives. We're excited to host today's workshop and discuss the importance of equity and thinking about equity using an older adult lens. Before you is the agenda that we will have for today's workshop. And as you can see, we will have a lineup of great, tremendous speakers who will share different perspectives of equity, and we will have time at the end of the workshop to answer questions that you may have. Before we move much further, we want to recognize you, our participants. While we wish that we had time to go around and learn everyone's name and who you represent, we will ask for you to add those details to your name and within the chat box. Please rename yourself and include your name, your pronouns, your preferred pronouns, and the organization you represent if you represent an organization. To rename yourself, please click on the participant icon at the bottom of your screen, find your name in the list, right-click, and select Rename. If you haven't done so already, we would also like for you to introduce yourself in the chat and include your email if you would like as well. So as mentioned, we will reserve time at the end of our presentation to answer your questions in the Q&A. And we ask that you keep yourself on mute throughout the presentation and use the chat box to submit your questions. Questions will be answered during the Q&A segment at the end of the workshop. So now that those housekeeping items are out of the way, we'd like to dive into today's workshop. And we recognize that the topic of this event, aging and equity, may have caught your attention, but maybe not all of us know what to expect from today's conversation or what equity actually means. This workshop was created because it is important to talk about equity and learn more about how equity can be tied into older adult work, including with the county's Age Well San Diego initiative and the Aging Roadmap. As you see before you today, the workshop is important because we want everyone, always, to feel welcome and included in the Age Well San Diego initiative. We also want to continually better our process, which includes being more conscientious about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and building our toolbox to be able to join in and facilitate conversations about equity. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Age Well San Diego initiative, Age Well San Diego is the counties of San Diego's initiative to make our communities better places for people of all ages to live healthy, safe, and thriving lives. Through Age Well, the county joins forces with the San Diego Foundation, AARP, the World Health Organization, and numerous community partners and residents to work towards making our communities more age-friendly. So, the purpose of this workshop is to strengthen our foundation when it comes to understanding equity and how we can incorporate equity in our Age Well work and beyond. We want everyone participating in this workshop to feel more confident with what equity means. And we know that's a difficult, sometimes word to understand, but how it applies and what we can do with that work. We are here today because we want to apply this knowledge to create a stronger age-friendly region, but we hope you find these conversations useful for your everyday life. And we also hope that you'll be able to share this information with others. So by the end of today's workshop, you will have a dynamic overview of what equity means and how we can keep equity at the forefront of our work and conversations. We want to learn about the county's commitment to equitable communities. We'll also get a snapshot of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GARE for its initials, and strategies to achieve racial equity and advance opportunities for all. We'll also learn about local equity example using a community-driven process. So you may recall that there were a few optional questions as part of your registration for this workshop. The two questions that were asked were, when you hear the word equity, what comes to mind? And the second question, what inequities do older adults experience? Before we hear what you all shared, we would like to invite our first speaker, LaRue Fields, to join the conversation. LaRue is a former staff member with the San Diego LGBT Community Center, where she was a program coordinator for the center's senior program. LaRue retired from the center in December 2019, but continues to be involved in the LGBT senior community. In the 17 years that she has lived in San Diego, LaRue has held positions with the San Diego LGBT Community Center, Senior Community Centers, and the Salvation Army. Among many other things, LaRue also serves on the County of San Diego's AIS Senior Advisory Council. LaRue, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Robert, for inviting me. And I would like to share a little bit about the AIS Senior Advisory Council. And with that being said, I'd like to send greetings from our chair, John Osborne, as well as other council members. So for one, for me, let me just explain, the AIS is a 30-member senior advisory, 30-member council, and it's made up of a little bit of everyone. And 10 of those 30 positions are appointed by the supervisors. So yes, we advise the supervisors on issues affecting older adults or seniors, whichever is your preference, so they'll know a little bit more about what's going on in our communities. And so, but we have such large communities that we really could use more help. And so I know I'm not supposed to be begging or pleading, but you know, the diversity, and as you talk about inclusion and equity and all that, there are barriers to a lot of things that as we have grown up. And so, but with that, there's some similarities and some differences. The whole point of the council is learning those similarities and differences and taking that experience to make the best possible experience we can in giving advice for the older adults or seniors in our community. Again, we can use some help. Now, remember, this is my motto: if you're not at the table, you're under the table. So this is where things are being held, actions is happening. The AIS advisory group, the staff, they're excellent. If there's an issue that I have, because I have a few issues, they address it, come back with me, because for me, how I got involved, I have this thing about being curious. That's what people call it. But see, I'm just straight up nosy. So since I was nosy, I had to dip over here. I wanted to see how this worked. I wanted to see how AIS, I wanted to see the budget. I wanted to know a little bit more about IHSS. I wanted to know about the old, the San Diego County Older Adults Council. So through my AIS participation, I get to see a whole nother level of the good work that AIS is doing. So I am just pleased with that. And I can't say enough of positive things about what's going on that the AIS services. But again, the differences is where we need the help. We need some new energy. We have some vacancies. We really could use some people that want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. People will come, of course, with their own personal agendas, as we all, dementia, mental health for me, etc. But it's not about us. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about we. This is a team effort, and I need some help on this team, as well as the other team members, with making it work and helping us truly represent the seniors in this community. So how do you say, what do I mean when I hear equity, or what do I think? I think when there are no barriers, when people can come attend the meeting and just be themselves. They don't have to talk a certain way. They don't have to have this education, but you have to be willing to sit in a meeting. But again, I don't march. I don't go out there and do out this and hold the signs, but I sure can sit 2 hours in a meeting once a month to be able to hear and be able to represent the communities I serve. And so I think for me, to make it equitable is for us to be at the table, because those are where decisions are made, and that's where I'm going to be. And I just hope that you would join me. Thank you, and have a good workshop. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, LaRue. That does cap in, what equity means to you, and of course, no barriers really puts it at the forefront. And your participation in the advisory council is a step in that direction. Is you removing a barrier so that you can provide your input. Like you always tell me, keeping it real, right?
Right. Keeping it real. That's the main thing.
Thanks, Lou. I do have the other question. What inequities do you think older adults face today?
Well, I think we have a lot, but my LGBT community face a lot of inequities. There's so many people, Robert, that feel they're not being heard. They feel they're invincible. And so I, try to be their voice and try to represent them, whether it's low income folks, whether it's people of color, whether it's lesbians, whether it's women, whether it's poor, whatever, but trying to be at the table to represent them because it is a struggle. And you know what, Robert, you don't have enough time in a workshop to explain all the inequities that are going on in older adults and what we experience. Food insecurities, just, financial insecurities, housing components. And so it's just so many things that we could do better that's a big concern to our community, especially this housing. I think Serving Seniors just did a report and they addressed that, but our homeless and the housing for seniors is getting to be a concern.
Well, thank you, LaRue, for offering your perspective. I remember when we met a couple of years back at the LGBT Center, and you were always being active, trying to bring on new resources and new activities for the participants of the center. And now you continue it on, even in your retirement. So thank you so much for being part of this workshop.
Thank you for having me.
So when it comes to answering the question, when you hear the word equity, what comes to mind? We heard from LaRue that no barriers. But the most common response was fairness, followed by access, opportunity, equality, justice, and value. And these are all responses that you all gave to us when you registered for this workshop. And fairness was overwhelmingly the most common response, as you can see it here. The bigger the word, the more responses received to that word. I look forward to hearing from our presenters as they deep dive into the meaning of equity and using their input or your input to explore this conversation more. We also heard from a number of participants that they have never heard of the term equity and they didn't know how to define it. And that is important, but that is also great to know and a big reason why we're here today. As LaRue stated, a 2-hour workshop is not going to be enough to touch on the subject of equity and explore all and solve the issues that that exemplify this. But we will try to touch the subject, define what it is, and hopefully this becomes a series and we elaborate more as we continue on our journey on equity. We want to start this conversation today, and hopefully you can help share what you learn about today with others so that equity becomes more of a familiar word. And thank you for providing your feedback. And this is a great way to get us all to check in with one another and get in the mindset of learning more about equity. And when it comes to answering the question, what inequities do older adults experience? We heard these responses: access, discrimination, transportation, technology, housing, which LaRue mentioned, health, and ageism. You also see the large word lack in there. And we received a lot of input about the lack of resources, transportation, and other items. And this shows that there's a deficiency in how older adults are cared for or access the resources that are available for them. You will also notice that this word cloud has a lot more words in there compared to the equity word cloud. Many participants shared their input, but the diversity of answers shows us that there are many different inequities that older adults face. Once again, our speakers will touch on these items, and we hope we all walk away from today's workshop with a greater understanding of equities and inequities that exist for people of all ages. Thank you for providing your feedback. This is a great way to get us all to check in with one another and get in the mindset of learning more about equity. So again, thank you all for your input, and thank you, LaRue, for helping us kick off today's workshop. We would like to continue hearing from our speakers and learning about equity. And as a reminder, please feel free to enter any questions or comments that you have in the chat box, and we'll have time at the end of the workshop to answer those.